Humanity has always reached for the stars, and we've always found a way to burn ourselves from getting too close. This is the story of Icarus.
Icarus was supposed to be a second Earth, some kind of paradise, brought to you by the best scientific minds in the universe. Yeah, right.
Instead, it became just another failed experiment, and eventually, for thousands of desperate people, a lottery ticket written in somebody's blood. But let's take it step by step. Like many players, you have probably wondered how come you're on an orbital space station, you have drop pods with precision targeting systems, a research tree full of advanced technology, but when you hit that drop button and land on the surface, you have nothing. No food, no tools, no weapons. You're punching trees in a 22nd century spacesuit and breeding rocks? So, what's going on? Is this just a game design shortcut? Is it a lore contradiction? You'll have your answers by the end of this video. Strap in, because it will be rough. Let's start at the very beginning. Sometime in the early 22nd century, humanity's automated survey probes that had been sent to analyze potentially habitable planets finally reached a red dwarf star called Wolf 1061, where they found a world that seemed most promising for human habitation. A moon orbiting a gas giant minus 14 light-years away from our solar system. It was smaller and warmer than Earth, but with an almost breathable, oxygen-rich atmosphere.
Icarus is a similar size to Earth.
At this point in history, Earth itself had just escaped from the brink of collapse, climate emergency as they dubbed it. But humanity, ingenious as it is, managed to pull through using genetically engineered enzymes, biotech that essentially rebuilt the planet's atmospheric balance. That success led to something extremely rare for the times, an era of genuine, all-encompassing, wide-reaching optimism and overwhelming trust in technological progress, political unity, ambition at a civilizational scale. This led to the creation of a pan-national organization, the United Development Agency, UDA, tasked with repurposing that biotechnology for terraforming the distant moon, building a second Earth. The project kicked off soon. Biologists, hydrologists, geologists, engineers, it took every bit of human expertise. Enormous terraforming machines, massive seeding operations of genetically engineered flora and fauna, plants and animals tweaked to survive alien conditions and slowly make the atmosphere suitable for humans. For a while, things looked promising. The terra zones, designated areas where terraforming was most active, began to take hold. Green spread across the alien landscape, hope spread across headlines back on Earth. And then, everything went wrong. The terraforming collapsed, catastrophically and without a clear cause.
This is why our ancestors believed in gods.
The atmosphere, instead of becoming more breathable, turned toxic. The terraforming process had laced the oxygen atmosphere with toxins like cyanide, decimating native life across vast regions of the moon. The UDA's carefully laid plans fell apart, zone by zone. Humanity's dream of a second home curdled into embarrassment, then crisis, then political firestorm. The media did what the media does, they gave it a catchy name. Not a neutral scientific label, but a name that captured the humiliation. Icarus, the boy who flew too close to the sun, had his wings burned, and fell into the sea. The image of overreach and failure, it stuck immediately.
No wonder they called it Icarus. Big planet-sized dream that came crashing down.
A monument to humanity reaching too far. The UDA ordered the orbital facilities shut down. The terraforming teams were recalled. Return to Earth. Mission over. But the scientists who built this world couldn't quite let it go. Before the last ships left, the biologists made one final set of adjustments to the fauna they'd already released. Genomic tweaks that allowed Earth species to filter the toxic atmosphere internally. Perhaps it was professional pride. Perhaps it was a hedge, a quiet belief that someone eventually would come back. And they were right, except they had not expected for it to happen this soon. One scientist in particular was not ready to leave without answers. D. Hamler, a hydrologist on the terraforming team, defied the order from above and led a small, clandestine team back to the surface to understand what went wrong. During deep microwave geological surveys, her team found something that stopped them cold. An anomaly. An impossibility. Deep in the planetary crust, they found deposits of exotic matter. Exotics. A material previously thought to exist only in the crushing gravity of collapsing stars. The kind of physics that tears atoms apart. Finding it here in accessible, surface-adjacent deposits on a moon 14 light-years away from Earth was like finding gold growing like wheat out of the ground. The working theory formed quickly. The exotic matter deposits had interfered with the terraforming process at a fundamental level and corrupted the enzymes that were meant to make this moon habitable. The process which had saved Earth poisoned Wolf 1061Ca. It laced the atmosphere with lethal impurities. But here's the thing about exotic matter. It is not just rare. It is the most consequential material ever discovered, a key component in the physics of faster-than-light travel, advanced weapon systems, and technologies that humanity had barely begun to theorize. The project that had failed to give humanity a second home was about to become something much, much, much more. What followed was Klondike 2.0, except this time the lone prospector with a pickaxe was replaced by a web of corporate interests, desperate to control the flow of the most valuable resource in the known universe. Unlike every good corporate dream in human history, it ran on disposable people.
We learned how unique Icarus really was.
The UDA knew they'd hit gold. They just needed some people to bring it back for them.
We were the first cohort. We were the first wave of cowboys.
Oh, they opened up Icarus to prospectors when all the terraforming went. So I signed on as soon as I could.
In 2135, the first cohort reached Icarus. It was not there to terraform or do research. These were not wealthy astronauts or specialists flown in on government salaries with full equipment packages. These were lower-class, desperate people from Earth. People who sold their homes and other possessions just to buy passage to the orbit of Icarus. When they arrived, they met Mo Chao, free of worry, a Xeno engineer from the team that discovered the exotics.
She offered to drop with us. She wanted to show us around like was it her apartment or something.
She was a veteran that felt right at home at Icarus and volunteered to go with the first cohort to the surface of Icarus to show them the ropes. Unfortunately, those would also be the last people to see her alive. On one of the missions, she didn't make it back to the dropship on time and was left behind. You see, the corporation that sent her on her last mission lives and breathes the following motto: the dropship leaves on time, or it doesn't leave at all. The dead are left where they fall. This is why you too have nothing when you land on Icarus, because you're just a disposable resource that, were you to perish,
People died on Icarus all the time, you know?
will be readily replaced by someone else willing.
This far from Earth, the best guardian of your safety is you.
Everyone from the first cohort and everyone who followed in their footsteps arrived broke.
People always think that we had a bunch of advanced tech up there, but we had nothing. We spent everything just trying to get there. We're like cave people in spacesuits, those first few drops. If we needed shelter or tools or something, well, we had to make it ourselves.
Took whatever contracts they could get to build up some wealth to be able to purchase better equipment and slowly, provided they survived, build enough of a reputation to take on more rewarding missions and explore uncharted territories for new exotics deposits. Exotics were your only ticket home. Without them, you couldn't afford to leave.
We needed a score. Some exotics to get us on the board and out of the UDA's pocket. That's how they ran it.
This is why you are rarely rewarded with exotics for completing missions too. It's not in the interests of corporations for you to have the means to leave. Plus, why would they reward you with the thing you're specifically there to mine for them?
The UDA hopes your time on Icarus is safe and successful.
Yeah, right.
The orbital stations themselves are not purpose-built luxury facilities either. They are cannibalized hulks, aging terraforming factory ships that failed their original mission and were repurposed on the fly. Nobody designed these for prospector comfort. The prospectors who maintain them get a bunk in return. That's the whole deal. And the reason nothing comes back with you from the surface, why your handcrafted axe, your cured leather armor, your hard-won tools all vanish the moment you extract, is that the people running those stations have never set foot on Icarus. To them, it's a death world, and everything that comes off it is a biohazard. The only things cleared for re-entry are workshop items, officially sanctioned, certified equipment that the station recognizes as safe. Everything else gets vented into space. So when you spend exotics and currency in orbit to unlock a better rifle or a knife and then drop back down with it, that's a veteran prospector who finally scraped together enough to equip themselves before the drop. That's the loop,
Drop.
that's the lore.
Survive.
It's not inconsistent.
And repeat.
There are several factions vying for control of Icarus and its exotics, and the missions you take in the game are contracted by different organizations depending on who wants what done. You'll see contracts come in from the UDA directly, from Genocide, China's National Space Agency, from the American coastal states, which considers itself a beacon of freedom and liberal values, but spends more on surveillance and military R&D than every other power that formed after the dissolution of the USA in the 21st century. Take the Beachhead mission, the tutorial which drops you in and teaches you the basics of survival. That's the UDA. The missions to get samples of flora and fauna, that's Genocide, and the ACS will be all over the place. You will also see such names as the African Assembly, South American Union, also known as UNIAO, the Administration, a Mars-based offshoot of the UDA, and the Lagos Unit, another branch of the UDA, established during an emergency summit in Nigeria's capital and based in orbit around Icarus itself, far from its parent body and Earth's media scrutiny. It has one goal: control of the planet and the flow of exotics. To achieve this, it has established Group 15, a sub-branch of the Lagos unit with a deliberately vague mandate, known for mercenary behavior, dirty tricks, and covert operations on the surface of Icarus itself. It's responsible for some of the most advanced research into Icarus, but one whose motto is, "The end justifies the means." The official policy of the Lagos unit regarding prospectors who miss their extraction window is equally blunt: no rescue. You remember Mo Chao, right? Everything that I've talked about so far has been pieced together from official Icarus mockumentaries and the now decommissioned Icarus website. Starting this chapter, there will be spoilers. Several decades after the first cohort, you arrive to Icarus. You're just another prospector, but your missions are anything but ordinary. You know how cats quietly withdraw and hide when they sense they're nearing the end of their lives, right? Satellites are made to do that too. When they reach the end of their life, they deorbit and burn up in the atmosphere. But sometimes, due to a satellite being too large or being made of dense and heat-resistant materials, that doesn't happen, and it falls to the surface. So when atmospheric processing satellites that had been decommissioned after the terraforming failed begin deorbiting and crashing down, their remains start dotting the Icarus landscape, along with all the evidence of what terraforming actually looked like. So the Lagos unit catches wind of these locations and sends you in to retrieve the payloads.
Because there's a lot of Icarus out there, and a lot of bio-warheads that never went off.
As you discovered during the course of the mission,
It's only a planet-killing bioweapon.
the satellites carried enzyme warheads, potent enough to kill every living thing from there to the horizon and reshape the whole planet. The large chunks of Icarus that were cleared this way and seeded by terrestrial plants and wildlife came to be known as terrazones. But with explosions that disturbed exotics from their underground slumber, things got rather messy. Some wildlife mutated from interacting with exotics, and alien plants began poking through the ground. The native quarrites, which live underground, were infused and empowered with exotics too.
50,000 to go.
All in all, enzymes and exotics seem to interact in peculiar ways, but we won't learn anything about that if we stay on Olympus, which doesn't have much else as pertains to the story anyway.
there.
Not everyone who comes to Icarus gets to work in the gentle forests of Olympus. There's a chance they end up in YouTube sweatshops, forced to produce videos day in and day out, with no way of escaping the treadmill unless they manage to earn some money on the side and pay their way out. I'm kidding, of course, but if you've been enjoying the video so far, please consider liking it and leaving feedback in the comments to please the algorithm. I also have memberships on the channel if you want to support me financially, which, if you join my Discord, will give you access to a channel where I share some extra game keys that I have. Alright, let's go back to Icarus then. So, not everyone who comes to Icarus gets to work in the gentle forests of Olympus. They might end up on Styx, the second major region in the game, unlocked for prospectors after Lagos pushes for expansion. The name is fitting. In Greek mythology, the Styx is the river that separates the living from the dead. Here, too, it separates the terra zones from the native Icarus wilderness. It has tougher wildlife, scarcer resources, greater challenge. It is also where you find native creatures such as Tusker, a massive creature that prospectors can break and ride. A sign that the relationship between humanity and Icarus isn't purely adversarial. You could, in some ways, make this place home. But the more you explore Styx, the more it begins to show something the Olympus missions hint at. The further you go from the terraforming epicenter, the stranger things get. The mutations intensify, the land feels less familiar, the comfortable illusion of a second Earth is getting thinner with every kilometer charted. Then, across the Styx, enter Prometheus, a region of Icarus where the terraforming
Did not work.
That's an understatement. It actually made everything worse.
We didn't hurt it. We just made it angry.
What didn't die was altered. Rapid, total genetic reshaping.
It mutated the existing wildlife to an unthinkable extent.
What on earth is that? Don't just stand there, get rid of it. Well, so much for rescuing the team. We will send in a cleanup detachment for body disposal shortly.
On top of that, the companies involved in Icarus are just not done messing with it. Genocide in particular, with Dr. Lee at the helm, keep running biological experiments on Icarus, exacerbating the issues. They're responsible for the giant spiders, giant Antarctic scorpions, and other mutations making your life difficult.
There's the pod. And there's a... What the hell is that? This damn place. You can either take it out or sneak past it. Oh, looks like land wasn't the only thing adapted around here. UDA hasn't been very forthcoming with information, but I've heard rumors. Some of them are locals. Some seem to be altered versions of Earth wildlife. All of them weird, and probably dangerous.
For reviving moa and mammoths and creating completely new life forms. At the start of your trip to Prometheus, you are told that Prometheus is just pure wilderness, that the region had previously been off limits to people. And yet, you soon find that there had, in fact, been others there before, and long ago too.
Man, this must have been up here for a while. Just look at this place.
And even more than that, one of them had stolen some files from the Lagos team and you're supposed to track them. Well, you don't find anyone, but you do find an audio log.
What?
Continuing on, you find another audio log in another hideout belonging to the thief. And this one, Shakes sold the voice in our comm device to the Cohort.
What do you want from here? It looks like the owner's not coming back anytime soon.
But why? Well, in chapter 4 I told you about Mo Chao, the Xeno engineer that was part of the original terraforming team, and that then went on missions with the first cohort until she got lost and missed her return window. Well, this voice is hers.
More resin and red flowers. More gold and iron. Need to find another source. Foraging is slow. Doesn't feel defensible here. Scout will be at HQ location.
Sis, are you there? We miss you. Please come home. I need my big sister. It's not the same without you. They're taking the rain you gave us. Please, we need your help.
Why do they keep sending these to me? Don't they know being stuck here is torture enough?
Saul was part of the team that lost Mo and had to leave without her. He could never have imagined she would have survived out here for so long.
If you couldn't find food, you died. If you couldn't find oxygen, you died. If you couldn't find shelter from the storms, you died.
So he clutches at the chance to learn more. He asks you to send him the data that she had left behind and says he knows someone that can decrypt it. Despite pursuing different goals, both Saul and Group 15 seem to align. You have to keep looking for Mo. You have to keep taking those missions.
I have a hard time telling which of these creatures are native to Icarus or Earthies we messed up. We always figured there'd be a small impact on wildlife we introduced here. Hell, we resequenced their genes. Thank God there were no people down here when it happened.
Well, what do you think? In the course of the mission Fracture, you search yet another of Mo's hideouts, where you find an audio log that she left specifically for you.
They're probably trying to get rid of me by this point. I've got black data on them. They really don't want anyone else knowing.
She wants you to see the crimes of Group 15 with your own eyes.
Not too far from here. I'll leave directions with this log.
Damn it, Mo. What about your family? Your crew? What about... I've thought about her stuck down here every damn day. Wondering how I could have stopped it. How I could have saved her. But now I find out that she chose to stay and abandon everyone she knew and loved. For what?
So you follow her lead to discover a cave full of primitive pottery, tools, and petroglyphs adorning the walls.
What the hell have you been messing around with down here?
That's classified.
Classified my ass. Keep going, Prospector. Dear God. Is that...
Mr. Belinsky, I really must insist.
There were people here.
Not people. This information is classified. You do not have group clearance to discuss such...
Fine. Not people as we know them. But still, the poor creatures. You knew about this. Even before the terraforming, you knew.
Subspecies 1341 were known to the group, yes. And deemed to be an unintelligent life form with no practical use for humanity.
Unintelligent? Are you kidding me? Just look at this place. Look at it. Oh, God, is that a child? I think I'm gonna be sick.
The creatures were deemed to be non-sentient by the group. The fact that they were unable to adapt and survive the terraforming process proves that.
Oh, sure. I'd like to see you survive the toxic hell we dumped on Icarus.
That's enough. You don't get to...
Clark, if that's even your real name. It seems we have ourselves a situation.
A situation indeed. I already have a team en route to your location, Prospector. You should have known better than to go poking around in the group's business, and as for you, Belinsky...
Now, let's not be rash about this. While you were pulling your hair out trying to keep this shit quiet, I took the liberty of uploading all the logs we've gathered over the last few weeks.
Uploaded? How dare...
Don't blow a gasket now. It's all been sent to a secure, private server. However, if anything were to happen to my partner here, or myself, that information will be beamed to every news station on Earth and orbit.
You have no right to distribute Group 15 property.
You're not really in a position to be making demands or threats. Call off your dogs. Are we clear on this?
You two will not be safe for long, Belinsky. The group finds a way. Always.
Then you better get going. So long. Ta-ta.
Then we enter the Null sector. the deadliest region of Prometheus, and get a first glimpse at what exposure to exotics does to humans. This is also how Group 15 justifies their strict no-rescue policy.
It's been 4 days. 4 days!
But here's the thing, we don't really know what drives this madness. Is it the exotics themselves, the brutal, alien conditions of the Null sector, or the crushing psychological weight of the knowledge these teams carried? See, at least one expedition team knew about the subspecies 1341, as evidenced by the petroglyphs etched into one cave's walls, the hiding place of one of the team members. In a horrifying spiral, he murdered his colleagues, hid in that caves, and ultimately ended his own life.
While he seemed to think he was contagious, the initial analysis of the bodies shows that this exotic infection is transmitted via the surroundings of the Null sector itself. Humans are always blowing things out of proportion, aren't they?
In Greek mythology, Elysium is the paradise where the heroic and the righteous rest after death. Well, this couldn't be further from the truth. Nobody rests on Elysium. They turn into specters and wraiths, and God knows what else. But we'll get there. First, we have to meet Mo. But not as a thief anymore, no. In a fascinating turn of events, she'd been appointed by the UDA to investigate Group 15. Why? Well, let's hear it from her.
After the discovery in Prometheus, Sol had all the evidence stored as collateral on a secure server. And of course, it didn't take long before someone at G15 tried to mess with the data. Unfortunately, that caused some chaos. I mentioned the riots, yeah? Well, the UDA responded by shutting down the group entirely. They kicked off a massive inquest. Sol was rotated back Earthside to help with the investigation, at his request. Before he left, he got in contact. Managed to convince me to run this team. Do you really trust someone else to investigate? Yeah, he was right. I don't.
She mentions riots here. This is from an earlier conversation where she tells us about TPS.
The People's Syndicate. They're an old world faction, formed around workers protesting conditions and pay. Unions, that sort of thing. Started out pretty harmless, but corporations and the UDA stamped down on them hard. There were deaths, which radicalized a handful of members. You've probably heard of the attacks they've claimed over the years. TPS was designated a terrorist organization, even though it was just mostly families trying to build better lives. More recently, the UDA had mostly wiped them out. Then our news of the Icarian genocide broke. Suddenly, TPS propaganda was being force-fed to everyone in orbit and back home. Earth had riots, attacks. Over our way, prospectors started to defect, banding together to steal exotics for themselves. It's hard to tell who identifies as what. Most of them aren't bad people. You've seen what it's like on Icarus. It's grueling. There's death around every corner. And we get cents on what makes the UDA billions. What am I doing working for them again?
Yes, what is Mo doing working for them again? Did they once again find a scapegoat, this time in the face of Group 15? Is it another case of we've investigated ourselves and found no wrongdoing? Is it just the UDA once again putting a useful tool exactly where it needs to be? Or could it be a genuine attempt to right the wrong? Mo had already tried running Special Agent Clark through interrogations. She got nothing.
I'll find it myself.
That's Mo. And that's where you come in. So you're folded into something called the Icarus Inquisition, tasked with investigating Elysium, a sector of Icarus reserved exclusively for Group 15 operations. Your team consists of Theo, an ACS hothead, a mandatory political hire.
Search the area for the entrance.
Iris, who originally worked with Mo on Icarus and who, strangely, doesn't seem to have aged a single day. And Victor, whose background is kept secret. While you get busy searching the facilities of Group 15 that got raided by the soldiers of TPS after the Group 15 had evacuated, the trio twiddle their thumbs at the base and exhibit some special chemistry.
That's a fair amount of money to waste on a fake expedition.
To preserve their reputation, they'd burn all the cash on Earth. I'm sure they know more than they let on. Most organizations do. Their methods may be different on the surface, but they're just as bad as TPS in some ways.
You seem to know a fair bit about TPS.
They're people just like you and I. Upset, desperate people doing terrible, desperate things. I don't completely disagree with their message, just their methods.
Gosh, TPS have really trashed the place. I've only ever heard statistics regarding TPS. Civilians killed, buildings burned, that sort of thing.
You hear whatever the powers want you to hear.
That seems a rather convenient excuse, don't you think?
I'm not saying those things don't happen. It's why they happen.
Just in this sector alone, there have been dozens of casualties already, Victor. Perhaps...
Look, just... let's leave it. Agree to disagree, yes?
Gotta move on, new blood. You got a big hike ahead. Extra points for any TPS you put down along the way.
Ah, Theo, they're not all bad. Most of them are just looking for a better life. It's not like the UDA have done prospectors any favors, right? Even you complain about them.
Not this again. Look, we get it. Everyone's a unique little flower full of potential and blah, blah, blah. Well, when flowers start killing other flowers, I say salt the fucking fields.
In this metaphor, are we all flowers? Are you saying we should all die?
It's military speak, you wouldn't understand.
After long and arduous hikes, you finally reach the underground laboratory, the one that unlocks every secret. Of course, it's lined with turrets and tripwires. Group 15 wouldn't want anyone getting in or getting out.
What the hell were those things? Were they...
Group 15 scientists.
Well, I guess we know why they didn't bother evacuating them.
So you left plenty of people down there.
It wasn't safe to bring them back.
Convenient excuse.
It's the truth.
Nobody comes back the same. Anyone left down there, you won't get anything useful out of them.
In the lab, you find a room dedicated to an orbital laser. Activation logs, timestamps and coordinates. You've felt this laser before, back on Prometheus, when Agent Clark ordered Mo's hideout destroyed while you were still inside.
Mo, didn't you have a few run-ins with the other end of that thing?
You could say that.
You find some other notes suggesting there was a containment breach in the lab, apparently after the events on Prometheus. Supposedly the one that was mentioned in one of the other facilities about leaving the people that had traceable radiation contact to die. And then a nuclear reactor sitting next to an enzyme propagation unit, a machine designed to disperse modified terraforming enzymes into the surrounding environment for creature experimentation.
Oh, shit. Mo! Mo, you need to see this. No, this can't be right. We would have seen this when we started terraforming.
What is it? No, that can't be. Iris, can you double check this for me?
That would mean...
The hell are you guys talking about? It's just a bunch of grass.
Shut the fuck up, Theo! Everyone, shut up! Iris, did you double check?
I'm sorry, Mo. It's correct.
No!
Oh, Christ.
I'll go check on her.
Would somebody please explain what the hell is going on?
It looks like the terraforming shouldn't have failed. It was sabotaged.
Why would they...
I don't... Mo or Iris will explain it better. But it looks like the goal was... exotics. Of course.
Oh. Oh.
Yeah. Prospector. I've got another job I need to do. Come back to Eden when you're ready for more work.
And then, another revelation. You know subspecies 1341. You found their pottery, their petroglyphs, their tools, and now you know what Group 15 did with them.
Species 1341. They're all dead. But they made excellent
test subjects.
Monster, you experimented on them?
Only 5.7% of the population survived by mutating into something that no longer reasons, no longer builds, no longer remembers what it was. The rest of them were killed by the poisoned atmosphere created by Group 15 only to secure exotics for the sake of private and corporate interests. They had the math, they had the models, they knew exactly what they were doing, and they knew exactly what lived here. A species that had done no harm, who had no idea what was coming, who were simply in the way of a number on a spreadsheet. Was that genocide? The report doesn't use that word. It doesn't use any words really. It talks about managed narrative control and plausible deniability. Bureaucracies are very good at that, making monstrous things sound innocent through euphemisms. The report we just read never mentions them, not once. A civilization with language, tools, art and basic chemistry, and they didn't even make it into the risk assessment. They were below the line of things worth considering. Not a moral risk, not even a political risk. The exotics were worth quadrillions, subspecies 1341 were worth less than a footnote, and apparently did not even deserve a name. On return, you find Mo's cabin, empty, but her journal entries plastered all over for everyone to see, and in it, the unraveling of a person in real time. Entry 1, disbelief, the data must be wrong. Entry 2, rage, I was a fool to return to Icarus. Entry 3, a plan forming. What if there was a way to restart the terraforming? Entry 4, paranoia, I can't trust them, they'll call me crazy. Entry 5, resolve, cold, terrifying resolve. No matter who gets in my way, I will terraform Icarus and save my people, and I don't care who has to die to make it happen.
I can understand why Mo's upset. She was incredibly hopeful back then. I think she took Icarus personally. She used to talk about Icarus like it was already her home. She was talking about moving her mother and her brother out here when we were finished. A colony for the hopeless, she called it.
Mo Chao saw the worst of humanity and still fought for its future. Yet when the time came to face the truth, she found herself unprepared. Was it the psychological scars left by the Icarian nightmare, or simply the inevitable breaking point for anyone whose entire world had fallen apart? Well, there's no time to ponder.
A process to terraform the Elysium quadrant is underway. The People's Syndicate is not responsible for loss of life if you choose to remain. We are TPS. The UDA will fall.
As you rush to stop Mo from blasting the planet, you're ambushed by the soldiers of TPS, who injure Iris.
It wasn't supposed to go this way. I'm really sorry. I told them just to delay you. I don't know what happened.
Iris suggests you secure the lab with the enzymes, where you find more mutated prospectors. This one beyond recognition. You check the now trashed lab, and the TPS took everything. Prototype equipment, enzymes, paperwork, all the evidence, all the hope of ever holding Group 15 accountable. Iris runs the numbers on whether the TPS can even succeed, since the sabotage decreased the likelihood of terraforming success, and comes up with 2%.
Look, you guys have to get off planet. No one has to get hurt. It's not your fight. I'm done with the lies, done with the bullshit. Icarus is going to be what it was supposed to, or I can f***ing burn, and the UDA along with it. It's not your fight. Get everyone from the team off planet.
So Theo heeds the warning and leaves.
I ain't dying down here. You guys are on your own.
Damn it, Theo. We need your help.
Did you happen to get a look at the size of that damn thing? I didn't sign up for this bullshit. I'm out.
No!
You guys can leave any time. Nothing is keeping you here. Just leave. It's not worth it.
And it's just you, Victor, and Iris now. Then you get more bad news.
If the terraforming fails, which as you know is very likely, or even if it does succeed, there's an unsettling high chance of I don't even know what to call it. A cascade reaction? Half the planet could be gone in seconds. We need to stop this.
So Victor and Iris trace the TPS compound with the stolen enzymes, and you go in, guns blazing. As you do, they argue about what they'll do if you don't manage to stop Mo in time.
Victor, I don't want us to rely on...
And we won't. But if the time comes...
It won't.
It will.
Fuck. Her helmet. We're too late. She tricked us. Iris, I'm sorry, but we have to do it.
No, I won't do it.
It's this, or we all die. We're too damn late, Iris. We didn't make it. Look at the satellite. She's about to pull the trigger on us.
This is an emergency announcement. Any remaining personnel on planet have 1 minute to get to orbit. The terraforming process has been initiated.
No, Victor, I won't do it. I can't.
We have no other choice. She's going to destroy the whole bloody planet with us still on it. There's no way.
Victor! Please, I can't. I just can't. There has to be another way.
You can't, but I can. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Don't look.
Iris, team? Oh God, no! No! I told you to get off planet! I can't stop it! It's already begun! I'm sorry! Christ! I'm so sorry!
Iris, God, I'm sorry. There was no other option. You agreed to the plan earlier.
I thought we would find another way, but you killed her. Mo. Oh, Mo, she was... God, she was better than all of us. I can't do this. I need space. Don't you dare follow me, Victor.
Prospector, She's refusing to talk to me. I'm sorry. I managed to catch up with her on her way back to Eden. We had quite an intense discussion. I know I did the right thing. There would have been far more people dead if I hadn't. But she may never forgive me. And she doesn't have to. We were able to agree on one thing, however. Mo, while clearly driven to extremes by her anger, was a source of hope for many. We agreed that in order to preserve her memory, we are going to keep the finer details of today from the UDA, or anyone else that comes asking. We wouldn't want it to reflect badly on her. Her family will be devastated enough as it is, not to mention Sol. We both agreed that it's better if he doesn't know.
Another secret for Icarus, added to the pile. Icarus is a story about ambition, exploitation, and the gap between the beautiful lie we tell ourselves about progress and the ugly truth of what we actually do in its name. The terraforming project was sold to humanity as its greatest hope, but the infrastructure of the project was immediately turned into a vehicle for destruction and resource extraction, with the prospector serving as the disposable human face of corporate greed. The UDA, the Lagos Unit, Group 15, each layer of bureaucracy slightly more sinister than the last, slightly further from accountability. The prospectors who drop to the surface are knowingly taking extraordinary risks for a system that views them as expendable. Some make their fortunes, some are left behind, while others survive somewhere in between, doing the dirty work for somebody else's profit. And buried beneath all of that, in the perilous zones of Prometheus and Elysium, there are still secrets and skeletons waiting to be uncovered, and new ones being added to the pile. Rocketworks has been clear, Icarus is a long game. The story is not over. The ultimate truth about the exotic matter, what it really is, what it really does, and to what lengths the people at the top of the food chain have gone to acquire it, is still out there. Every prospector who drops to the surface is, whether they know it or not, a thread being pulled at the edge of a very large conspiracy. And what would you do, faced with the choice of destroying a planet to secure a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, a technology like faster-than-light travel? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to check the official documentaries and my Icarus guides. And if you ever need a dedicated server for Icarus or any other game, register for G-Portal with my link now to lock in a 10% discount for any game server, forever and with unlimited use, as long as you cancel the previous rental when you're done with it.